Rob here at etrailer.com, and today you're going to be taking a look at the Roadmaster high-powered diode wiring kit on our 2018 Ram 1500. Now, our high-powered diode wiring kit is going to allow us to take the signals from our motorhome and transfer them to our Ram so we can safely flat tow it and get all the signals we need so everybody around us knows what's going on. Whenever you're looking to flat tow your Ram, there are several different options of getting your lighting to the back here and transferring all the signals. One of those ways is the magnetic lights. We've all seen them, they work, but that's going to cause us to have to set it up each time we want to tow. Then whenever we get where we're going, we're going to have to take them off and store them somewhere. Not to mention, most likely there's going to have a wire running along the length of the truck, flapping in the wind, potentially scratching the paint. Now, another option would be a bulb and socket kit. Now, that's going to completely bypass our electrical system, so we don't have to worry about any kind of backfeeding. However, we are going to have to drill a hole to put an extra bulb inside the taillight housing. Now, our diodes are going to have to wire in, and we are going to have to cut into our factory electrical system. However, they are going to protect our factory system in case there are any kind of backfeeding or any issues on the motorhome end. Not to mention, it's not going to change the outward appearance at all, and it is a one-time installation, so we're not going to have to set anything up after we have them installed. Now, keep in mind, that's only going to be one component you need for a complete safe flat tow setup. For a complete setup, you're going to need a base plate, a tow bar wiring, a braking system, and finally safety cables. One thing to keep in mind is our wiring kit is not going to come with the plug to mount on for your truck, the bracket, or the cord that goes in between the motorhome and connects to the truck. However, our wiring is going to work with 4, 5, 6, or 7-way round connectors. In our application, we're going to be using the Roadmaster 6-way round connector as well as the bent bracket to mount it up. Now, you can find all those options here at etrailer.com. But now that we've seen what our wiring looks like and gone over some of the features, let's get it installed together. To begin our installation, I started at the front, and we want to start with our wire really close or where we're going to be mounting our plug. So I wrapped my wire around the bracket so it wouldn't fall back through, and I ran my wire all the way to the back of the truck. So if we come underneath the bumper here, we can see where the wire came through the splash shield and went around my base plate, zip tying it, securing it to the frame. I went over the front subframe, came down over along the side of the frame. Then I started using zip ties again to secure it to these factory lines to keep it as far away from the exhaust as I could, just following along down the frame rail until I got to about my fuel tank. Now, once I got here, what I did was actually toss the wire over to the other side so I could reach it easier, ran it along the top of the frame till I got to where I could reach it on the inside by my fuel tank. I continued to run it along the frame till I got about to the rear axle. I went as far up as I could to avoid anything, moving further back, and then once I got to about right here where that subframe brace is, I dropped my wire over to the outside of the frame and I have it stopped right here. Now, at this point, you want to grab our wire and you want to separate each one of these so that we have 4 individual wires. Now, the easiest way to do that is if you can grab it with your finger, you just want to pull it apart. And we're going to pull all the wires apart until we have 4 separate wires as far up to the last anchor point as we can go. And if you are having a little bit of trouble using your fingers, at the very end, just take a pair of cutters and cut in between the wires to get it started, and then we should be able to pull them apart from there. Once all the wires are separated as far up as you can get them, we're going to move up top and we're going to remove our taillights. So if we open up our tailgate and we look on the inside section right here, we're going to have 2 bolts that are holding our taillight in place. We'll grab a T25 Torx bit and we're going to pull those 2 bolts out. And once we have those removed, we're going to grab our taillight, and you want to try to pull as straight back as you can because we have some alignment pins on the side that we don't want to break. A little bit of movement side to side is okay, but again, really try to come back as straight as you can. And once we have this one removed, we're going to have a couple bulbs. This top one, it's going to have a locking tab on it. It's actually on the bottom. It's a little hard to see. But we're going to slide that locking tab away from the light. And we're going to squeeze the tab. That should unlock it. We'll be able to pull the socket out. going to do the same thing for the bottom one. We'll squeeze that tab on the end, and we'll unplug it, and we'll set our taillight aside where it won't get damaged. Now I went ahead and cut open the tape that was covering up our wires for our taillight connector, and I tested out what circuit each wire is for. Our black wires are ground, and we're going to have a blue striped white wire. The one in the middle here, that's going to be our taillight circuit. And then finally the one on the very end that's a solid white wire over on the driver's side is going to be our turn and brake signal. On the passenger side, we're still going to have the black wire as our ground wire, the white wire with the blue stripe as our taillight signal, but our brake and turn signal is actually going to be a white wire with a green stripe on the passenger side. We want to make sure we remember all these, so if we need to, we can write them down so we can start making our connections. We're going to go ahead and start making our connections on the driver's side, since that's where all of our wires are underneath. So we want to start by grabbing our brown and our yellow wire, and we should be able to just reach underneath our truck, maybe get our hand in there to grab the wires and pull them up top. Once we do have them up, you want to pull all the slack through. Make sure it's all to the top in the housing, and then what I like to do is grab a zip tie, and I'll typically zip tie it up top. That way the loose wires still has plenty of movement, but it's not going to fall back down, get caught in anything, or cause any problems later on down the road. We're going to start making our connections, and we're going to start with our brake and turn signal wire, which is the solid white wire on the driver's side. I'm going to come down from the plug a little bit. I'm going to cut the wire directly in half. Then I'll strip back both ends. You want to grab one of the diodes that has all blue connectors on it, and we'll take two of the connectors off, slide it over our bare end of our wire, and we'll crimp it in place. We'll grab our yellow wire. We're going to estimate about how much wire we need to reach the wire that's going towards the front. It's not a bad idea to give yourself a little bit of extra. Have a little bit of a loop. Cut that as well. Strip back the end of it. We'll grab the last connector off of our diode and crimp that in place as well. Then we'll take our diode, and if we look at it, we're going to have two terminals on the inside and one on the outside. The one single terminal, it needs to go closest to the plug. So we'll plug that terminal in. And then on the other side, it doesn't matter which way you plug it in, but we want the other end of that wire to go in one terminal and our yellow wire to go into the other terminal. So once you have everything hooked up, this is how your brake and turn signal diode should look. Now our taillight wire is going to hook up very similarly, except on this one we're going to be using the diode that has the yellow terminal on it. So we'll cut our wire in half and use the two blue diodes to connect it together. Now I'm going to grab our brown wire. We'll estimate about how much we need. We're going to cut off the excess, but this time we're going to hold on to it. And we want to strip back the end of the excess wire and the end of the wire coming up from the bottom. The whole reason why we needed to grab the diode with the yellow connector is because we need to combine the two brown wires together, and our yellow connector is just slightly larger, so it is going to fit easier inside. So once we have them combined together, we'll just slide the terminal over and crimp it in place. Then just like the other diode, we'll grab it, we'll plug the one closest to the taillight plug itself into the out, the other wire into the in, and then our brown wire also back into the in terminal. Now we'll grab our excess wire. Now you notice you're not really going to have a whole lot left over because our truck is rather long, but we actually need to send this down through the taillight housing again so we can meet up with our green wire and go over to the passenger side and hook it up the same way. So it would be a good idea to go ahead and pick up some 16 gauge wire so you can run it across, as well as some butt connectors, which all of that can be found here at etrailer.com. So I'm going to go ahead and extend my wire, drop it back down, and run the green and brown over to the passenger side. So I dropped my wire down, met up with my green wire, and I started following it towards the back of the hitch running my wire all along the back, zip tying it to some factory lines. I ran it over to the passenger side. Then I used the same method of just pushing my wire up, grabbing it at the top, and pulling everything through. For our white wire, this is going to be our ground wire. So I'm going to take my white wire and I'm going to ground it directly to the frame. So I'm going to estimate about how much wire I need. Then we can trim back the excess and strip the end of the wire. We can grab the ring terminal out of our kit. We'll slide it over the end of our wire and crimp it in place. We can take the included self-tapping screw and a 5/16 nut driver, and I'm going to drive this right into the bottom of the frame. Whenever you tighten your self-tapping screw, you want to make sure that ring terminal doesn't move, but you also don't want to strip out the screw. Now on the passenger side, we hooked up our wires the same way as we did on the driver's side. We took our brake and turn signal wire, which is our green wire, and we hooked it into the white wire with the green stripe. And then we took our taillight signal wire, which is our brown one, and hooked it into the white wire with the blue stripe. Now with all this connected back here, we can put our taillights back in place and tie up any loose wires either back here or underneath our truck. Now once you have all your wires connected back to your taillight housing, you want to make sure that the diodes aren't going to interfere with anything. Line up those tabs, then we can put the assembly back in. Then we're going to replace the two fasteners holding everything in place. We're going to move up to the front now so we can wire up our plug. Now on our application, we're going to be using the 6-way round. So we want to take the dust cover off the back. I'm going to slide it over the end of my wires. And for now, I'm just going to kind of push it out of the way so I have room to work on the front here. Now we're going to need to separate our wires again. Because at this time, we only need maybe a couple inches at most. So I'm just going to come in between the wires. Just make a small cut. We'll just grab the wire, start separating them so we have enough so we can work with each individual wire. We're going to want to strip back the end of each one. Now if we grab our plug, if we look at the back of our terminal, it is going to be labeled, but I'll go ahead and go around going through what each function is and what color wire is going to get hooked up. Look at the very top, at the 12 o'clock position, it's going to be marked TM for trailer marker. That's going to be our brown wire for our taillight signal. And we come over to the large terminal just next to it, mark GD for ground. That's going to be our white wire. Then down here at the bottom corner, we'll have LT for left turn. That's going to be our yellow wire. Then over here next to that will be RT for right turn, and that's going to be our green wire. Now specifically, there is two ways you can wire up a 6-way, so we're going to have two more terminals left. Typically the center pin is going to be your 12-volt accessory power. And then the last one on the side of that is going to be labeled S, and that's going to be for your electric brake signal. So we're going to go through and we're going to hook up all of our wires. Just keep in mind, there's a very small Phillips screw holding all the wires in place. You don't want to take this screw all the way out because it's very small and very easy to lose. You just want to loosen it up enough so you can slide the copper section of the wire into the terminal and tighten it back up. Final step of our installation is going to be testing all our circuits. So I went ahead and hooked up our RAM to our motorhome and we'll run through the lights. We can see that the taillight circuit is working properly, as well as the left turn signal, the right turn signal, and our brakes. So now that we've tested it, we know it works. I'm going to take the boot back off. I'm going to apply a little bit of dielectric grease to the inside by the terminals. That way hopefully it'll prevent any kind of corrosion from building up, any moisture getting inside there. And if you need some dielectric grease, you can pick it up here at etrailer.com. We'll slide the boot over. And what I like to do to hold everything in and kind of protect the back of the wires is I'm going to wrap the entire back of my plug with some electrical tape. That'll cover up the boot, hold it in place, and then also hopefully hide a little bit of those brightly colored wires on the front of our RAM here. So we'll go ahead and remount the plug to the front. Just take our screws and nuts and secure everything down. Just get the one started and tight so we can get the other one in place And then we'll tighten up our hardware using a Phillips screwdriver and a 3/8 wrench. And then I'll finish up your installation and look at the Roadmaster 6-wire trailer connector for the vehicle end on our 2018 Ram 1500.